friends, welcome to Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. We just have probably a couple days worth of reading left in Nuts to You. We'll probably finish this book this week. Have you noticed, said one elderly squirrel to his companion, there seem to be more of us than usual. I thought maybe it was just me, said his friend. My memory isn't what it used to be, but I keep seeing squirrels I don't even recognize. And not one or two, but a lot, like that one. Excuse me, he called out. Are you from around here? The squirrel stopped. She took the nut from her teeth with her paw so she could speak. It's me, Charette, she said sweetly. Ah, yes, said the old man. He didn't remember her, but he didn't want to admit it. Charette, nice to see you. Carry on, then. And away she went. Hard to believe I could forget a face like that, said the old animal. The next time she scampered by, he called out, Hello, Charette. And by the time after that, he had convinced himself that he really did remember her. Meanwhile, Titi coaxed the pups along an easy path, singing songs and cracking corny jokes. When they reached the new place, she led them down a tree and right into the middle of the grove. We're on a field trip, she said to the first local they saw. Is there a good place where we can set up camp? A field trip, said the squirrel. Yes, said Titi. We're going to a field to see what it's like. Oh, said the squirrel. You can stay anywhere, I suppose. She looked up to suggest a likely spot. The trees seemed suddenly dotted with big, brushy leaf nests. She wasn't sure there were that many yesterday, or maybe it just looked like more with so many leaves down from the storm. But who did they belong to? And now a squirrel she had never seen before ran up a tree. Who is that? She said, scratching her head. That's Charette, said one of the pups. Hey, Charette. Charette turned and waved and then went inside a nest. Sure who? Said the local. Charette, said Titi quickly. She's with us. And it looks like she's already got a start on our camp. Come on, up we go. Bring a leaf. The local squirrel, whose name was Buffy, watched them go. Then she watched another unfamiliar squirrel, this one with a face full of nuts, scurry along a branch. And here came the reddish one, with a close conversation with two elderly grays. There must be a lot of these field trips happening today, she murmured, and to think I never heard of one before. She felt so unsettled, discombobulated. Was it these strangers or that weird rumbling? It kept getting louder and more drony and whiny and relentless. And what was it? She covered her ears and went off to her den. Something was happening. Something was not right. Something big. You couldn't see it, but you could hear it and you could feel it and you could even smell it. It was happening ever closer, ever louder. It was harsh and grating and shrill with thunks and wailing. Everyone was on edge. One by one, old-timers and newcomers alike crawled into dens and nests and wished and hoped and waited for the bad feeling to go away. No one wanted to go back out and see what it was. It was too wrong out there. Our squirrels, the game playing squirrels, were in makeshift nests, which made it scarier yet. Some of them were doing better than others. Titi snuggled with the pups. By now they thought she was the world's best babysitter. When she told them it would be okay, they believed her. In a nearby hollow, Berk's mouth was dry. His right eyelid twitched. His tense muscles pestered him impatiently to either fight something or flee. But he believed that he needed to be strong for his team. He had found them an excellent shelter, and now he would keep up morale. This too shall pass, he said, this darkest hour just before dawn. If we all work together and do what needs to be done, we can whistle a happy tune. Things like that. He had a million of them. And even though Chebby and Jetta, and especially Chi, all knew more about what was going on than Berk did, his words made them feel calmer. So maybe he really was a leader, at least in this situation. Chai's team was in a dray that was barely holding together. It was also tippy. It wobbled each time someone moved or even coughed. Zek paced in circles around the others, trying to calm himself. Chai felt the dray tilt dangerously from side to side as Zek circled. If we all just keep still, he said, I think. But he didn't finish because Zek had disappeared through a weak spot in the floor. The last thing they saw was the surprised look on his face. Instinctively, everyone backed away from the hole, and Dre went off balance and tumbled out of the hill with all of them, minus Zek and Zai. Jed, the only squirrel still outside on purpose, was throwing together a quick nest when a movement caught his eye. He turned to see Zek, and then the Dre falling through the air. He winced as they hit the earth, inches and seconds apart. So there's this nest falling through the air. Ouch, he said, but Zek jumped up uninjured and scrambled inside the collapsed Dre. The leafy heap heaved and thrashed as if it might erupt. Then it seemed to shape itself from the inside into a mound and was still, sort of. Dottie and Jip's team plastered themselves against the wall of the hollow Dottie had found. The opening faced back toward home, so noise came pouring in. On the upside, said Dottie. I can't hear Jip. She could see he was still talking. She could tell he was scared. She was scared too. They all were. She willed herself to lean over and peer out of the hole. She couldn't see anything unusual except a lightness that shouldn't be here. And if there were a clearing, Dory studied it, puzzled, until a wave of sound warmed her face. She pulled her head back inside and shut her eyes tight. Chourette's team was squabbling. She stepped inside, believe it or not, to escape the noise. Plus, it was getting stuffy in here. Too many squirrels. Paws over her ears, she stood on a limb and looked toward the bracket. She saw a lightness, too. She frowned, and then she headed off to see what it was. After a long time, the sound seemed to be moving by, leaving, and then, abruptly, it stopped. One by one, the squirrels ventured outside where they gathered into two clumps. One clump was made up of squirrels who had always lived there. The other clump was made up of the Game Plains squirrels. It was one of these new squirrels who spoke first. Is the game over now? Asked Dottie. I don't like this game. She shook her head, trying to get rid of the ringing in her ears. Game? Asked one of the locals. Is that what this is? A game? The two groups turned to face each other. Chourette raced into the grove breathless. She looked from one group to the other. Chourette, cried the old man. Hello, she said politely. Nuts to you. And then she turned, searching, until her eyes found Jed. Our grove, she said, is gone. Chapter 22. Story first, fight later. Both groups of squirrels turned toward Chourette. The old man chuckled. He said, Chourette, you silly girl, look around. You are in the grove, dear. But his friends and neighbors stared at the newcomers in bewilderment. Who are all of you? One of them called. Why are you here? Someone shouted. Why did all of you come at once? What do you want? A grumbling arose. The shouts turned quickly to, Get out of here! Leave us alone! Go back to your own grove! But, said Chourette. Who's going to make us? Said Burke. He stepped forward, ready for a fight. Yeah, said Jip. Who? He struck a menacing pose just aft of Burke, who he had hoped to use as a shield if the fight got nasty. Behind them, their baffled compatriots tensed up and prepared to defend themselves. The pups ran to their mothers. Titi turned to Jed. Now what? She said. Jed jumped into a stump where he could be seen by everyone. We are squirrels like you, he said, and we brought our own nuts. May we tell you a story? Story first, fight later, as the saying goes. Jed hoped it would hold true. He wasted no time. Amid the thick and intertwining boughs among the limbs, branches, and leafy twigs of our grove, he began, the buzz paths ran. Even the very oldest squirrel could not remember a time when they were not there. The squirrels crept forward. Without planning to, they stood closer and closer together. Maybe you have to be in a group of people, all listening together, to a really good storyteller. Maybe it's your Uncle Norrell at Thanksgiving dinner. Everyone listens together and laughs together, and it makes them feel closer. It makes us feel like a family. Jed was a quiet squirrel. He wasn't a performer, but he forgot himself and spoke from his heart. He was so sure now that every squirrel would want to hear his story that they did. He told of the hawk, of the new grove, of the redder squirrels, Chai and Titi, and the terrible cutting. He told how no one would listen and how they came up with the idea of the game. By the time he came to the end, which was the part right before he started telling the story, everyone felt that they had been at his side through every twist and turn. That didn't mean they all believed what they were hearing. They weren't sure they were supposed to. Maybe it was just entertainment. Now see, said Zek, it was so much better than the first time you told it. You put the parts in about us. That was a good idea. I've chewed my finger claws practically down to the nubs just listening, said a squirrel from the new grove. If something like that were to actually happen, I don't know what I would do. But it did actually happen, said Jed. That's the whole point. It did happen, didn't it? All eyes turned to Jed. He looked to the sky. Through the nearly leafless trees he could see that the sun was about to fall below the horizon. There would be light for a little while yet. Come see for her yourselves, he said. I think there is just time. So we'll have to see what happened to their grove tomorrow.